dive into Breakdown 1975. The film opens with a jarring juxtaposition of 1970s American malaise. Official logos fade into archival footage, immersing us in the post-Watergate climate of paranoia and unrest. We see newsreels of Nixon's resignation and Americans grappling with a loss of faith in their institutions. The tone is immediately set. This will be a raw, unfiltered portrait of a society in crisis, where cinema becomes both a mirror and a coping mechanism. A heated montage erupts as voices from the era argue that vigilantes are necessary, capturing the era's escalating sense of urban danger and moral ambiguity. Clips from films like Taxi Driver and Death Wish blend with news clippings about rising crime and vigilantism, underscoring how New Hollywood directly channeled public fears onto the screen. The documentary's narration emphasizes how these movies didn't shy away from society's darkest impulses, instead making anti-heroes out of broken men. The film sharply pivots to the racial tensions of the period, with angry chants of "bust them back to Africa" filling the soundtrack. News footage of busing protests and clashes over school integration is intercut with scenes from Dog Day Afternoon and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Interviewees reflect on how the era's films confronted, and sometimes exploited, America's festering racial divide, capturing the raw nerves and social fractures of 1975. A sardonic narrator urges everyone to keep calm, declaring, "This can't go on much more than forever." The sequence cuts to talking heads like Patton Oswalt and Bill Maher, who draw parallels between the exhausted cynicism of the 1970s and today's political gridlock. The film uses this moment to highlight how both the country and its art seemed locked in a perpetual loop of disillusionment, with filmmakers mining that malaise for emotional truth. Archival footage from the fall of Saigon plays, showing South Vietnamese pilots leaping from helicopters to be rescued by U.S. sailors. The documentary draws a direct line between this chaotic end to the Vietnam War and the sense of national humiliation that permeated American life. Interviews with Oliver Stone and other veterans reveal how these traumatic images gave rise to films that wrestled with war's psychological scars, laying the groundwork for later classics like Platoon. For those who managed to land, the reality was brutal. They were simply pushed over the side and into the sea. The documentary lingers on this chilling moment, using it as a metaphor for the era's sense of abandonment and betrayal. Jodie Foster's narration intones how these real-world horrors bled into the storytelling of the time, fueling movies that were unafraid to confront despair and moral compromise head-on. A rapid-fire montage contrasts the spectacle of disaster films like The Towering Inferno with real news coverage of energy crises and urban decay. The film posits that Hollywood's obsession with catastrophe was both escapist and eerily prophetic, reflecting a country teetering on the edge. Experts like Martin Scorsese chime in, explaining how the period's biggest hits channeled a unique blend of fear and thrill, making social collapse entertaining. Attention turns to the women of New Hollywood, with Ellen Burstyn reflecting on her role in Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. Clips from the film highlight the struggles of women seeking autonomy amid societal breakdown. The documentary connects these on-screen journeys to broader feminist movements, showing how the cinema of 1975 gave voice to stories rarely told in mainstream media before. The documentary explores the rise of media cynicism through Network, featuring iconic scenes of Howard Beale's on-air meltdown. Interviewees dissect how the film foreshadowed the coming age of outrage-driven news and reality TV. The sequence draws a straight line from the film's satirical fury to today's fractured media landscape, underscoring the prescience of 1975 cinematic vision. A reflective sequence showcases how these films created anti-heroes and challenged traditional notions of morality. Seth Rogen remarks on the enduring influence of these flawed protagonists, while Bill Maher notes how audiences were hungry for authenticity, not heroes. The documentary highlights the emotional complexity and lasting impact of characters who mirrored the public's own confusion and rage. The climax arrives at the 1976 Oscars, where the daring films of 1975 receive both critical acclaim and bittersweet recognition. Directors and actors recall the electric atmosphere and the fleeting sense that Hollywood had been changed forever. The film marks this moment as a turning point, after which studios began steering cinema back towards safer, more formulaic territory, foreshadowing the coming era of blockbusters. As the documentary concludes, the narrative returns to scenes of passionate debate and protest, symbolized by shouts of "Bus your kids, Teddy." Morgan Neville's thesis is summarized: the chaos and breakdown of 1975 gave birth to a brief but brilliant surge of artistic freedom, clarity, and moral complexity in filmmaking. The screen fades out on a montage of iconic film moments, leaving viewers to ponder what was gained in those tumultuous years. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. See you in the next one.